Right now, somewhere on your phone, there is a number quietly climbing without your permission. It isn't your photo gallery. It isn't your downloaded videos. It's a hidden layer of files you've never seen, never opened, and never agreed to store, sitting silently behind apps you trust completely. You deleted those old pictures last month. You cleared out that folder of screenshots, and yet your phone still says storage almost full. That's not a glitch. That's not your imagination. Something is filling your phone back up after you empty it, and once you understand exactly what it is, you'll never look at that storage full warning the same way again. For most people, the moment storage almost full appears on screen, the instinct is immediate and predictable. Open the photo gallery, scroll through old pictures, delete a few dozen blurry shots and screenshots you forgot you took, and assume the problem is solved. And for a few days, it usually feels solved. The warning disappears. Life goes on. But then, weeks later, sometimes even days later, that same warning reappears, as if nothing you did mattered at all. Most people simply repeat the cycle, deleting a little more each time, blaming themselves for taking too many photos, never once questioning whether the real problem was ever their photo gallery to begin with. What almost nobody realizes is that the photos sitting visibly in your gallery are often the smallest part of the actual problem. Here's what most people are not seeing, and it starts with a single number that almost no one fully understands. Every free Google account, the moment you create it, comes with exactly 15 gigabytes of storage. Not 15 gigabytes for your photos, not 15 gigabytes for your email. 15 gigabytes total, shared silently across 3 completely separate services at the exact same time: Gmail, Google Drive, and Google Photos. Think about what that actually means for a moment. Every email you've ever received with an attachment, every photo you've ever backed up at original quality, every file you've ever uploaded to Drive for safekeeping, all of it drawing from one single shared pool, whether you ever realized these 3 services were even connected or not. And here's where it gets genuinely strange, because this isn't simply about your cloud account running out of room somewhere far away on a server you'll never see. The shared, invisible ceiling has a direct, physical consequence on the device sitting in your hand right now. When that 15 gigabyte pool fills up completely, your Gmail account doesn't just slow down. It stops working entirely. You can no longer send a single email. You can no longer receive one either. Every message sent to you simply bounces back to whoever sent it, undelivered, while you sit there with an inbox that might be almost completely empty, wondering why your own email has apparently stopped functioning. Read that again. Your inbox could be nearly empty, and Gmail could still refuse to work, because the real problem was never your inbox at all. It was photos and files you backed up months or years ago, quietly eating into a quota you never knew your email depended on. So how does something like this happen without anyone noticing until it's already a problem? The answer lies in exactly what counts against that 15 gigabyte limit and what doesn't, because the distinction is far more confusing than it has any right to be. Every Gmail message and every attachment counts, even the ones sitting forgotten in your spam folder or your trash. Every file you've uploaded to Drive counts. Every photo or video you've backed up at original, full quality counts. Even documents and spreadsheets you've created or edited since the middle of 2021 count, something almost nobody remembers agreeing to when that policy quietly changed years ago. Meanwhile, certain things genuinely don't count at all, creating a confusing patchwork where some files silently drain your storage while nearly identical looking files leave it completely untouched. And here's the detail that turns simple confusion into outright frustration for millions of people. Even after you finally find the files responsible and delete them, your storage number often doesn't update right away. It can take anywhere from 30 minutes to several full days for Google's systems to recalculate and reflect what you've actually removed. Imagine deleting genuinely large files, watching your storage bar with genuine relief, only to see the exact same number staring back at you hours later, as if nothing happened at all. Most people, understandably, assume the deletion failed or that they did something wrong. In reality, they did everything correctly. The system itself is simply slow to catch up with what they've already accomplished. But this is where the story takes its first real turn, because the 15 gigabyte cloud quota, frustrating as it is, only explains half of what's actually happening to your device. The other half is happening locally, directly on the phone in your hand, completely separate from anything stored on Google's distant servers, and this part of the story is, in many ways, even more unsettling, because almost nobody knows to look for it at all. Consider Google Photos specifically, because it sits at the very center of this confusion for millions of users. When Google Photos backs up a picture you've taken to the cloud, most people assume that picture has simply moved, transferred neatly from their phone into the cloud, freeing up exactly the same amount of space it used to occupy locally. That assumption feels completely logical. It also happens to be wrong. By default, after a photo finishes backing up to the cloud, an identical copy frequently remains sitting on your physical device, completely untouched, taking up exactly the same local storage it always did, Google does provide a specific tool designed to fix this called Free Up Space, a feature that scans your device, confirms which files are already safely backed up, and only then removes the local duplicate copies sitting in your gallery. The problem is straightforward and almost embarrassingly simple. Most people have never once opened that feature because nobody ever told them it existed in the first place, or that their phone had been quietly holding on to duplicate after duplicate this entire time without ever asking permission. And it gets stranger still because in 2026, researchers and frustrated users alike have documented an additional wrinkle buried deep inside Google's backup system. If your shared cloud storage across Gmail, Drive, and Photos drops below roughly 100 megabytes of free space remaining, the backup process can quietly begin looping. Your phone shows preparing backup endlessly, again and again, without ever finishing, and critically, without ever displaying a clear out-of-space warning that would actually explain what's wrong. Think about what that means for the average person experiencing it. Your phone is stuck, your photos aren't backing up, and the system responsible for telling you why has gone completely unhelpfully silent, leaving you to guess at a problem you have no realistic way of diagnosing on your own. Now here's where the story escalates again, because Google Photos and Gmail attachments are far from the only things quietly consuming space directly on your device. Beneath the surface of your phone, hidden in folders you'll likely never think to open, sits an entire ecosystem of cached files, leftover data, and background processes, almost all generated by Google's own apps, almost none of it visible unless you specifically know exactly where to look. Start with something most people have genuinely never heard of: Android System Web View. This isn't a flashy app with a colorful icon sitting on your home screen. It's a quiet, essential background component that renders web content directly inside dozens of the other apps installed on your phone, everything from login screens to payment portals to customer support chat windows. It updates constantly, silently, completely independent of your phone's main operating system, sometimes without that update even appearing on the standard update screen you'd normally check. Sitting right alongside it is Google Play Services, an equally invisible component responsible for power running notifications, location services, account syncing, and dozens of other features you rely on every single day without ever consciously thinking about them. Both of these components have been documented, repeatedly and consistently, consuming unexpectedly large amounts of background storage and data, and crucially, both can update or quietly bloat without ever triggering a single visible notification telling you it happened. And in June of 2026 specifically, this exact problem became impossible to ignore for a significant number of users. Reports confirmed that 3 separate Google-controlled background components, Android System Web View, Google Play Services, and a newer privacy-related component called Android System Safety Core, all had pending updates available at the very same time. And yet, none of those 3 updates reliably appeared on the normal app update screen most people check. The same screen millions of users have learned to trust completely, assuming that if it says everything is updated, there's genuinely nothing left to worry about. Think about what that quiet failure actually represents. An entire promise built carefully over years that checking one simple screen would tell you everything you needed to know about your phone's health quietly broken, with most users having absolutely no idea it had happened at all. So if these specific background components aren't the primary culprit in your particular case, where else should you actually be looking? This is where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable, because the honest answer is almost everywhere you'd least expect to look, hidden in places most people have literally never opened in the entire time they've owned their phone. Every single app installed on your device generates something called a cache, a collection of temporary files specifically designed to help that app load content faster the next time you open it. In isolation, a single app's cache might seem genuinely harmless, a reasonable trade of a small amount of storage in exchange for noticeably better performance. But multiply that single cache across dozens of apps you've installed over months or years, and the numbers stop looking harmless at all. One documented case found that clearing the cache from a single messaging app alone recovered close to 1 full gigabyte of space, instantly, without deleting a single conversation, photo, or saved file. Now imagine that exact same pattern repeating quietly across every social media app, every browser, every streaming service, and yes, every single Google app currently sitting on your phone right now. Then there's a category that genuinely deserves special attention because it's specifically designed to be confusing by its very nature. The storage breakdown, labeled simply Other or Miscellaneous. On many devices, this single, frustratingly vague category turns out to be one of the absolute largest sections in the entire storage report, sometimes consuming more space than every individual app combined. Hidden inside it, private, app-specific data, system logs, crash reports, nobody asked for or remembers generating, thumbnail previews for photos and videos you may have deleted ages ago, and failed downloads that quietly never completed but never properly cleaned themselves up either. It's deliberately vague specifically because it represents the genuine chaos of modern smartphone usage, the accumulated digital residue most people never see, sitting there silently for months or years on end completely unaddressed. And here's a detail that catches almost everyone off guard the very first time they learn it. When you uninstall an app from your phone, assuming reasonably that everything connected to it disappears along with it, Android frequently leaves entire folders behind anyway, quietly, completely untouched. Configuration files, downloaded content the app once used, cached resources it generated while you were actively using it. These orphaned remnants typically hide in specific folders most users have genuinely never opened. Internal storage, then Android, then either OB or data, depending on the specific app involved. If you've installed and uninstalled even a modest handful of apps over the past few years, particularly games, which are notorious for generating enormous data packs, this single hidden category alone can quietly add up to multiple gigabytes of completely wasted, invisible space. Even something as simple and routine as deleting a photo directly from your gallery doesn't actually work quite the way most people assume it does, and this single detail genuinely surprises people every single time they learn it. On Android, deleted photos don't disappear from your storage immediately the instant you tap delete. Instead, they move into a recently deleted or trash folder, where they continue sitting fully intact, taking up exactly the same amount of physical storage they always did for a full 30 days before finally being removed for good. Imagine deleting genuinely large videos and dozens of photos, watching that satisfying confirmation message appear, and then opening your storage settings minutes later, only to discover, with real frustration, that nothing has actually changed at all. The files aren't truly gone. They're simply waiting patiently in a digital holding cell you likely never knew existed. So at this point, a fair and obvious question emerges. If all of this hidden storage consumption is genuinely happening, quietly, in the background, completely without most users' awareness or consent, what can you actually practically do about it? And here is genuinely good news, worth holding on to throughout everything you've just learned. Every single one of these specific problems has a real, documented, surprisingly simple fix, and almost none of them require any technical expertise whatsoever to carry out correctly. Start with the most foundational, highest impact step of all. Actually look at your phone's real, complete storage breakdown instead of guessing or assuming. On Android, navigate into Settings, then Storage, then Apps, and you'll see every single app installed on your device sorted clearly and immediately by exactly how much space it's actually using, both for the app itself and separately for its accumulated cache. This single step alone, taking less than a minute to complete, tells you with complete certainty whether your specific problem is genuinely photos, a single bloated messaging app, an old, forgotten game you haven't opened in over a year, or something else entirely you hadn't even considered as a possibility before checking. From there, move directly and specifically into Google Photos itself, because this is consistently where the single largest, most impactful recovery of wasted space tends to happen for the overwhelming majority of regular users. Open the app's settings, navigate into storage, and clear both the cache and, if genuinely necessary, the stored data as well. Then, separately and just as importantly, actively seek out and run that free up space feature mentioned earlier, the one specifically designed to identify photos already safely backed up to the cloud and then remove the redundant duplicate copies still quietly sitting on your physical device. For most people who have genuinely never run this particular feature before, even once, this single step alone can recover several gigabytes of space in well under a single minute of effort. Next, turn your attention directly to Gmail, because remember, your email and your photos are silently drawing from that exact same shared 15 gigabyte pool discussed earlier. Open Gmail and search directly for attachment, space, larger colon, 10 capital M. That precise search instantly surfaces every single email in your account containing an attachment larger than 10 megabytes, which, for most regular users, represents a meaningful and often surprisingly large chunk of their total storage usage. Delete what you genuinely no longer need. And then, critically, don't stop there. Navigate specifically into your trash folder and empty it completely and manually, because deleted emails continue counting fully against your storage quota for a full 30 days unless you take that one additional, easily forgotten step yourself. For Google's own background system components specifically, Android System WebView and Google Play services among them, the fix requires a slightly different approach than a typical app, precisely because they frequently don't show up properly on your phone's standard default update screen. Instead, navigate directly into Settings, then Apps, locate the specific component by name, and look for an option labeled App Details in Store. From that exact page, you can manually check for and install any pending update directly, completely bypassing whatever silent gap exists in your phone's normal, everyday update process. It takes only an extra minute or two of effort, but it specifically closes a gap that, as documented cases from earlier this year clearly proved, your phone's regular update screen may simply never tell you about on its own. And finally, for that broad, vague, frustratingly unhelpful other or miscellaneous category discussed earlier, Google has, somewhat ironically, built its own dedicated tool specifically to address it. An app called Files, by Google, includes a clean tab specifically engineered to automatically scan your entire device, identify duplicate files, locate old downloads you've completely forgotten about, and surface exactly the kind of hidden digital junk that traditional storage menus consistently struggle to clearly identify or explain on their own. It requires no special technical permissions, no rooting your device, no advanced knowledge whatsoever, just a few minutes of your genuine attention and a willingness to actually open it and look. What makes this entire situation genuinely worth understanding, beyond simply recovering a few gigabytes of space today, is the deeper, more uncomfortable pattern sitting quietly underneath all of it. Modern smartphones have become remarkably sophisticated at hiding their own complexity from the people who use them every single day. Layer upon layer of caching, background syncing, automatic backup processes, and shared cloud quotas all work together, mostly silently, mostly without your direct involvement or even your awareness, until the exact moment something finally breaks, fails, or simply stops working the way you've always expected it to. The phone in your hand right now isn't lying to you when it says storage is full. But it is, in a very real and meaningful sense, telling you only the smallest, most visible fraction of an extremely complicated, deeply layered, and largely invisible story unfolding quietly underneath the surface every single day, without you ever realizing it. So here's the genuinely uncomfortable question worth sitting with, long after you finish watching this video, and long after you've cleared out whatever hidden files you managed to find today. If a single shared storage quota, one you likely never fully understood in the first place, can quietly lock your email, stall your photo backups indefinitely, and consume gigabyte after gigabyte without ever clearly explaining itself along the way, what other systems on your phone right now, today, are operating with that exact same kind of quiet, invisible complexity, waiting patiently for the moment something finally breaks before you ever think to look closely enough to notice? That answer, much like the hidden files currently sitting somewhere on your device right now, is still waiting to be found. The only real question left is whether you go looking for it today or whether you wait for your phone to force the issue on its own.